Okay, we can start. Oh, sorry. So welcome to the MPC Round Efficiency session. We're going to start with reusable secure computation in the plane model from Vipul Goyal, Aksarawan Srivasan, and Mingwan Wang. And Mingwan will give the talk. Please start.
Yeah, thanks, Antigoni, for the introduction. So I'm going to talk about reuse secure computation in the plane model. This is joint work with Vipul and Akshay. So since we're talking about MPC, let me quickly recap what MPC is. So imagine you have a number of parties, each holding some input xi, and MPC allows this set of parties to collectively compute some function f with their input. At the end of the protocol, all parties should learn the f, x1, x2, x3, x4. And for security, we ask that for an adversary that corrupts any subset of the parties, its view should be indistinguishable in the ideal world where they only interact with the trusted party. So the setting we consider in this work is, first of all, we are in a plane model, meaning that there is no CRS or trusted setup. And we are in a dishonest majority, meaning that an adversary can corrupt all but one parties. And we consider malicious security, and in particular, the simulation should be black box. And finally, we consider the standard setting where the simulator should run in polynomial time. So the objective, what we're trying to do here is to construct a round optimal protocol. So let's first look at what are known for in this setting. So first, in the 2PC setting, where in a unidirectional message model, meaning that each round consists of only one party sending message to the other party. The result of Kass and Ostrovsky proved that you need at least 4 rounds of interaction to do general purpose 2PC. And in this setting, only Alice on the left received the output. And in the MPC setting, where in a simultaneous messaging model, meaning that every round consists of every pair of parties sending message to each other, again, the result of Garg et al. Show that you again need at least 4 rounds of interaction to compute the arbitrary function. On the other hand, so these are the lower bounds result that says you at least need 4 rounds of interaction. On the other hand, starting from the seminal work of Yao and Beaver, Micheli, and Rogley, we now have a amazing sequence of work that now we know how to construct 4-round malicious secure MPC, even with the minimum assumption that 4-round malicious secure OT exists. So this seems like a very satisfying lower bound and upper bound, and the problem is completely solved. So what I'm talking about. In this work, we consider the setting where, let's say, Alice and Bob want to continuously evaluate a set of functions. So let's say initially they hold input x1 and y1, and they want to compute a function f1. This will require them to interact in 4 rounds to compute f1, x1, y1. Now, suppose after that, they suddenly want to compute another function with different input x2, y2, and the function f2. If you just use the generic approach, then you need another 4 rounds of interaction to find out what f2, x2, y2 is. And this goes on. So this seems like a wasteful use of the interaction they have used in previous computations. So the question we ask is that, can we reuse some of these previous interactions to reduce the number of rounds when you need to compute another function? Now, we consider 2 modes of reusability. First, let's consider a setting where party's input doesn't change, but only the function changes. Now, what is the smallest number of rounds that you need after given the function f2? So evidently, you need at least 1 round of interaction to compute this function, because if you don't even need to interaction and you can compute f2 on x1, y1, then this clearly violates the security of MPC. So you need at least 1 round of interaction. And that means potentially we can hope to reuse the first 3 rounds of this interaction and just have an additional 4th round given f2 to compute the f2 with input x1, y1. On the other hand, let's consider a setting where both Alice and Bob want to change their input, and also the function may change. Then in this setting, you need at least a 2 round of interaction to compute this function. This is because if you only have 1 round of interaction, there's this so-called residue function attack, meaning that since Alice, Bob sent the message and Alice can use any input to compute this function, that means Alice learned the entire residue function of this F2 with the Bob's input restricted to be Y2. So that's why you need at least a 2 round of interaction after learning the input and the function. So this tells us that we can hope to reuse the first 2 rounds of the previous interaction and continue from that 2 rounds once we know the input x2, y2 and the function f2. So given this observation about what is the optimal round you can reuse, we consider the optimal setting of how to use these interactions. First, let's say Alice and Bob first interacted in 2 rounds using a 2 round interaction. After that, given the input x1 and y1, they were engaging a 3rd round computation, basically committing to the input x1 and y1. And then every time a function f1 comes, they can use a 4th round message to compute f1 with input x1 and y1. And this can be continued when they have new functions f2, f3, and so on. And even though I wrote these f2, f1, f2, f3 sequentially, they are not sequential execution. They are really different instances of the 4th round of the first 3 rounds of interaction. Now, besides that, we call such each new 3rd round a reuse session. So you can hope to reuse the first 2 rounds by creating different reuse sessions where the input may change to be x2 and y2. And now, given this new reuse session and the new 3rd round message, you can hope to do the same thing again to reuse these 3 rounds of interaction in this new reuse session to compute different functions G1, G2, G3 using different instances of the new 4th round message. And we allow the 2 parties to create arbitrary many of such reuse sessions. And within each reuse session, you can have arbitrary many 4th round messages. Now, I want to emphasize that these different reuse sessions are really independent in the sense that even if you abort in some 3rd round message in this reuse session, you can still create new reuse sessions and continue from the previous 2 rounds of interaction to compute new, to have different input and functions. And let's say even in this reuse session where the computation using G1 abort, you can still hope to have different 4th round message with different function G2. And these 2 mode of reusability can be arbitrarily interleaved and requested by the adversary. And so so for example, the adversary may request a new reuse session with some input x3, y3, and they may continue that reuse session for 1 instance of the 4th round message with function h1, and then the adversary can request adaptively in any manner he wants. Okay, so this is the model that we are in. Before I present you our results, let me first quickly go over some of the recent works on reusable MPC. So recently there has been a lot of works that construct a reusable MPC with a trusted setup. So that means there is a CRS trusted setup with a common reference string. And in this model, you can hope to do MPC in maliciously secure MPC in 2 rounds, where the first round can be reused. So intuitively, the first round committed to the input of all the parties. And then given this first round, you can create many different instances of the second round, computing different functions. Now, if you want to use these set of works to realize what we realized, then what you need to do is that you need to first engage in a 4-round protocol that generates this CRS, and conditioned on this successful execution of this CRS generation protocol, then you can use these reusable MPC with trusted setup to create arbitrary reuse sessions and different 4th round messages. So the difference between this realization and what we hope for is that here you need a 4 round of setup phase, basically, while what we are hoping to achieve is just a 2 round of setup. Okay. So, and additionally, very recently, Fernando et al. Also constructed a reusable MPC. This work is in a plain model, and it only has 2 rounds where the first round can be reused. But they consider the setting where the simulator runs in super polynomial time. This is inevitable, as we know that if you ask the simulator run in polynomial time, you cannot hope to do it with less than 4 rounds. Okay. So given this model, what we did in this work is that first we show that if you assume decisional Diffie-Hellman or quadratic residuosity plus ZAP, you can construct a 4-round reusable 2PC. So ZAP is just a special kind of 2-round public coin witness indistinguishable proof that can be based on various assumptions. For example, it can be based on QR. And condition and build up upon this reusable 2PC result. We also construct, so the 2PC result is in the unidirectional messaging model where only one party received the input, received the output. And build up on this reusable 2PC, we also construct a reusable MPC. This is in the simultaneous messaging model where all parties learns the outputs. And on top of the what we call the 4-round reusable 2PC that we constructed earlier, we also need a semi-malicious 2-round reusable MPC and ZAP. So semi-malicious adversary just is basically a semi-honest adversary, but they can choose their randomness arbitrarily. So for 2-round MPC in the semi-malicious setting, you can hope to realize them in just 2 rounds. Contrary to the malicious setting. And for all these earlier reusable malicious secure MPC work, they all imply semi-malicious 2-round MPC protocol. And in particular, this can be based on various assumptions here. Okay, so this is the result that we obtained in this work. Now let me get into some technical part and try to tell you some of the challenges. So I will just use 2PC as the in this talk because first it's a simple, and the second it already captured most of the challenges. So let's consider this standard way of doing malicious secure 2PC where Alice and Bob use a 2-round malicious secure oblivious transfer to Bob, so that Bob can send Alice the label of the garble circuit. And the Bob, upon giving the function to compute, can send the garble circuit in the 4th round. And additionally, in order to extract in order to ensure that the garble circuit is constructed securely, honestly, we will use a 4-round zero-knowledge protocol to prove that this garble circuit is constructed honestly. Now, this is a standard way of constructing a 4-round 2PC malicious secure 2PC. The question is, can we hope to make this reusably secure? Now the question, the issue here is that if you want to make this reusably secure, then the first 2 rounds of interaction will be fixed. And the condition on this fixed 2 rounds of interaction, parties will send, for example, Alice here will send a different 3rd round oblivious transfer messages. And on top of that, Alice will have a different input each time it sends a new oblivious, the 3rd round oblivious transfer message. And so therefore we have to ensure that this 4-round OT subprotocol is reusably secure in the sense that both receiver and the sender might change their input and send multiple messages. And also this 4-round reusable zero knowledge also needs to be reusable in the sense that now Bob needs to send multiple 4th round messages because for different 4th round message, you create a different garble circuit and you have to prove that this garble circuit is generated honestly. So in particular, the statement is only given to you in the 4th round and you have to be able to generate multiple 4th round message to prove this. Now let's look at each the zero knowledge and OT individually. So let's start with zero knowledge, which has a more straightforward solution. So the starting point of our construction is the well-known Feig-Lebedeaux-Shamir framework, where basically Bob used a witness indistinguishable proof to prove the statement, and it's a composition with a trapdoor generation protocol to enable the zero knowledge simulator. And since we need this zero knowledge to be a proof of knowledge, we'll also add extractable commitment schemes to ask the Bob to commit to the witness in the extractable commitment. So now suppose I want to reuse the first 3 rounds of this zero knowledge protocol such that the prover can send multiple fourth round messages, prove different statements. There are various issues. First, that the statement and correspondingly the witness is only given to you until the 4th round. So we have to make this extractable commitment delayed input. And on top of that, it has to be reusable. I will send multiple 3rd round message commit to different things. And the idea is very simple. You just add using a symmetric key encryption. So here you can ask Bob to, in the 2nd round, commit to a random sample the secret key for the symmetric key encryption. And in the 4th round, you on top of the existing extractable 3rd round extractable commitment message, you encrypt your witness under this symmetric key encryption secret key. And another issue is that this witness indistinguishable proof, it also needs to be reusable. And to achieve this, we replace the WI proof with a 2-round ZAP. In particular, ZAP is a publicly owned 2-round witness indistinguishable proof, so that the prover, when generating the 2nd round ZAP message, does not share any shared state between 2 different instances of the 2nd round ZAP message. Therefore, this is trivially reusable secure. So this is a fairly straightforward solution for the reusable zero knowledge. Before I move on to oblivious transfer, let me quickly make a few comments about it. First, you might notice that 4-round zero knowledge protocol usually just requires one function. Here we use a ZAP, which is stronger than one function, and you might wonder if I can just construct it from one function. And here we observe that it's unlikely that you can do so, because for any 4-round reusable zero knowledge, you can fix the first 3 rounds of interaction and give the secret state to the prover and the verifier as the private proving key and the verification key. This basically gives you a pre-processing NISP, and all the construction of pre-processing NISP requires something stronger than one function. So given the state of the art, it's not likely that we can do this straightforwardly from just one function. And secondly, you might notice that we are reusing the first 3 rounds in the sense that the first 3 rounds needs to be fixed. And this is an issue in the 2PC setting because now we don't want the Bob to check whether the 3rd round of the sending from the Alice to be consistent across different view sessions. However, we observe that this is inherent in the unidirectional message model, because if this is a proof of knowledge, then any extractor you use to extract the knowledge from the prover, Alice can basically use the same strategy to send a different 3rd round message to extract the knowledge committed in this extractable commitment. Therefore, it's inevitable in the unidirectional message model. However, we observe that this is not an issue in the simultaneous messaging model, and therefore in the MPC we generated, we don't, in the MPC, reusable MPC we constructed, we don't need parties to keep this secret state across different reuse sessions. Okay, so now let me tell you about our reusable OT. So again, our starting point is this standard way of constructing a 4-round reusable OT using public key with special properties. So basically, what the receiver do is that the receiver commits to 2 strings, S0 and S1. And in the 3rd round, it will review only one of these strings, in particular, the one not corresponding to the choice bit, S1 minus B. And for the other string, it can be equivocal. In particular, the receiver can use some public key to pad it with the challenge string S sending from the sender in the 2nd round. And we ensure that the receiver cannot cheat by using a witness indistinguishable proof to prove that one of these review string is indeed committed in the 1st round. Now, given this 3 round of interaction, the sender can just pad it this 2 string with S, use them as a public key, and send this public key, encrypt both messages using the public key in the 0 branch and the 1 branch. And also for this protocol to be secure, you need the public key to be pseudo-random to be indistinguishable from S1 minus B. Okay, so this is what's known to know how to construct 4-round OT, maliciously secure or 4-round OT. So the question is, can we make this protocol reusable secure? So first observation is that you can trivially add the sender's reusability, meaning that the sender can send different 4th round messages using different inputs. This again is just that you can use the oblivious transfer to set instead of sending the corresponding messages, you send one of the secret key of a symmetric key encryption, and then you can keep encrypting using the 2 secret keys for your different messages you want to send in the 4th round. So that's not an issue. Now, what about the reusability for the receiver? So the first observation is that if the receiver wants to send different 3rd round messages using different inputs, then very quickly after 2 reuse sessions, the sender will learn both S0 and S1. And then if I want to reuse it again, then it's trivially the sender can distinguish which one is a freshly sampled public key padded with S, which one is the fixed string you committed in the 1st round. So that's obviously not reusable secure. Okay, then what you might want to do is that, okay, then we can make this extractable commitment delayed input so that the receiver can pick a fresh S0 and S1 for each 3rd round message it sends. So then now the receiver will use different S0 and S1 in different reuse sessions. So then this problem of leaking S0 and S1 is gone. So is this reusably secure? Unfortunately, this won't be reusably secure because now the receiver sees the challenge string S, and then based on that can pick S0 and S1 to such that then the receiver can encode both, can pick a bad S1 minus B such that this S1 minus B padded with S is a valid public key that it knows the secret key. Then in this way, the security for the sender is completely gone. So now at this point, it seems that we have reached a barrier that either we are giving the receiver too little freedom that they committed all the randomness in the 1st round, and after use for multiple sessions, the security is gone, or we give the receiver too much freedom that it can send only sample the randomness in the 3rd round, such that it can trivially cheat by learning both the message of the sender. So somehow we have to reconcile between the fact that we are giving the receiver too many freedom versus giving them too little freedom. So before I tell you how we address this problem, let me first recall a classical primitive construction of a bit commitment schemes from now, which where we draw the inspiration from. So recall that in Now's bit commitment schemes, the receiver first sends you a challenge string S, and the sender, depending on which bit you commit, you can send either the pseudo-random string or the pseudo-random string padded with this secret key as the challenge string S. And then the decommitment is just to review the seed of this PRG. So this commitment scheme would be insecure or that the sender could be equivocal if the sender somehow can find a secret key SD prime, such SD and SD prime, such that their difference is exactly this challenge string S. However, the idea is that for most choices of S, this won't happen because that the PRG pseudo-random string is very, very scarcely in the domain of all the possible random strings. And in particular, the choice of all the SD and SD prime, suppose you have a large enough stretch for your pseudo-random string, then it's only 2 to the 2 to the lambda, for example. And if as long as your output of the PRG has any non-trivial extraction beyond stretch beyond the 2 factor of 2, then this scheme will be statistically binding. So based on we use a similar idea in the reusable OT that we want to construct here, in that we change the way that the we change the way the receiver committed to the string. Instead of commit to completely random string S0 and S1, we ask the receiver to commit to the 2 seed for the pseudo-random generator, and only for the for the binding branch, the receiver needs to send the pseudo-random string, which is the output of the PRG taking the seed as input. Now this way, again, the receiver can only cheat if it can find a suitable public key and the pseudo-random string, such that their difference is exactly this challenge string as sent from Bob. And the idea is that we will prove that most of this challenge string S is good in the sense that it cannot find a seed SD and a valid public key such that their difference is equals to this S. And this requires us to have some special kind of a public key encryption where both the public key is pseudo-random and the valid public key are sparse, and such that most string S are good. And also any maliciously chosen invalid public key should completely hide the message. And if we have such a special kind of PKE, by a careful argument, we can argue that this oblivious transfer is reusably secure. Now let me finish by tell you one possible way of how to construct such PKEs. So here is a simple construction of this special kind of public key encryption from decisional Diffie-Hellman assumption, where let's say your public key domain is just a 2x2 matrix of group elements. Valid public keys are those that forms a DDH triplet, and invalid public keys in the sense that when this matrix has rank 2. Now to encrypt a message, you just sample a random vector U and V, and multiply this UV with this matrix of the group elements, and padded the second coordinate with the message. This first of all, this the valid public key is clearly pseudo-random, and also the valid public key will be scarce, assuming that the group is large enough. And also the fact that if it is a maliciously chosen invalid public key, then the rank of this matrix will be 2. And then given the first output of this inner product, the product between the vector and the matrix, the second coordinate is still uniformly random, so it completely hides the message. So this is one simple construction of this special PKE that we require. In the paper, we also show how to construct this from any statistical standard private oblivious transfer and quadratic residucity. Now this roughly sums up how we construct our reusable 2PC, where by replace every building block with a reusable variant, we were able to prove that our 2PC is reusably secure. And also for the MPC, I won't get into it, but essentially we use the similar ideas by replacing all the building blocks of this recent work of Chaudhary et al. With the reusable variant. We are able to prove that the MPC protocol is reusably secure. And with that, I will end my talk here.
Thank you so much. While the next speaker is setting up, we can get a quick question because there's no time for questions, but does anybody have a question? Okay, while Yuval is setting up, I have a question. Yeah. So can you get concurrency?
Sorry?
Can you get concurrency? You can run multiple executions at the same time.
Yeah, that's a good question. We did not consider it in this paper. I'm not sure.
Here?
Yeah.
Oops. Is it silent?
Hi, I might have left my phone under a seat here in this room. Got it. Wonderful.
Steve has it over.
Thank you.
First open question we solved here. Okay.
Okay, next we have round optimal black box MPC in the plane model from Yuval Isai, Akshida Kurana, Amit Sahai, and Akshay Raivan, Srivasan, and Yuval is going to give a talk.
Okay, thanks Antigoni for the presentation. And yeah, so this is joint work with Dakshita, Amit, and Akshay, and special thanks for Akshay, to Akshay for the slides. Okay, so this kind of continues the theme of the round complexity of MPC that we've heard, I guess, in a couple of previous talks here. And let me just give a brief intro to the model of MPC I'll be talking about. So this is just the textbook model of MPC with dishonest majority in the plane model. This is really just what you expect. We have a set of parties, each holding a local input. There is some public function F the parties want to compute. And to this end, they interact. In the end of the interaction, we want them to learn the output of F, but we also want to achieve security against a malicious adversary that can corrupt any number of parties. And by this, we informally mean that the adversary gains nothing except for learning the output. And this is formalized by requiring that every such polynomial time adversary can be efficiently simulated in an ideal process where a trusted party evaluates F, and all the adversary can do is choose the inputs and decide whether to abort the protocol after learning the output. Okay, so this is really the usual notion of security with abort with dishonest majority. And the question we ask, and we're not the first to ask, is what is the round complexity of such protocols which are black box and work in the plane model. So let me break this up to explain some of the quantifiers here. So by round complexity, I just mean number of synchronous rounds where in each round, each party can broadcast the message. And the adversary as usual is rushing, so the message the adversary broadcasts in a given round can depend on the messages of the honest parties in the same round. Okay, and we obviously want to minimize the round complexity. We are referring here to black box protocols. And by this, and this is in contrast to the previous talk and similarly to the next talk of this session, by this I mean mainly that we have some simple low-level cryptographic primitive, typically some version of two-party oblivious transfer, which the protocol invokes as an oracle without knowing the code. So we cannot do things like prove in zero knowledge that the garbled circuit was well formed. Okay, this is not a black box use of an underlying primitive. And moreover, we also require, and this is similar to the previous talk, we also require black box simulation and black box security proof in the sense that we can use, the security reduction makes a black box use of the adversary. Okay, so this is what is commonly known as a fully black box protocol. Okay, and finally, we consider the plane model, so there is no common randomness or any other kind of setup. Okay, so this is the question. And let me briefly review prior work, some of which was mentioned before. So, we know actually from, in a model where each party can, in the two-party case where each party can talk only, one party can talk in any round, we know even from the work of Goldreich and Kraftcheck on zero knowledge that 4 rounds are necessary with black box simulation. And this was generalized to the case where both parties in the two-party case can talk in each round by Garg et al. And then there's been a really long and fruitful line of work. This is just a partial list that culminated in the work of Choudhury et al., showing that 4 rounds are sufficient, and this can even be achieved under the minimal assumption that 4-round malicious secure oblivious transfer protocol exists. Okay, however, these protocols do not make a black box use of the underlying primitive. Okay, so this is not within the model that I want to consider in this talk. Okay, previous work by the same group of authors showed that in fact 5 rounds are sufficient given a slightly stronger version of semi-honest 2-round OT. And moreover, also for a special class of functions, it showed that an optimal 4-round protocol. Okay, and our goal in this work is to close the gap, is basically get a 4-round protocol which is optimal and do it for general functions. Okay, so I guess by the way I pose the question, you can guess what the answer is. However, the answer is not as strong as we'd like it to be, in the sense that we would have liked to use in a black box way any semi-honest 2-round OT protocol, and instead we need the OT protocol to have 2 special properties. The first one that we also heard about in the previous talk is known as statistical sender private OT or SSP OT, which means that even a computationally unbounded receiver in a statistical sense needs to learn at most one of the sender's messages. And the second extra requirement is that we want the receiver's selection bit to be hidden from a sub-exponential time sender, say 2 to the cubic root of n. Okay? So this is the underlying primitive that we use in a black box to get a general 4-round MPC protocol. This is the main result. So in the rest of the talk, I will give you, and I didn't keep track of the time. How much time? Okay. Yeah, just warning, run out of time. So in the rest of the talk, I will give you some ideas of how we prove this main theorem and the tools we build along the way. However, I would like to start by asking, why should we even care? Okay, so many papers, talking about round complexity of black box MPC and non-black box MPC. Why should we care? Okay, oh, and I forgot to say that this primitive, even though it's stronger than what we would have liked, we have some simple protocols that implement this primitive for most standard assumptions that are known to imply public key encryption. Okay, so it's a nice primitive, not as nice as we would have liked it to be. Great, so, okay, I guess there is some version mix-up. I guess that the version of the slides here is not what I expected. So let me tell you, this is not on the slide. Let me tell you a few words, because I think, we hear so much about, round complexity, plane model, black box. So let me try to motivate the 2 things separately. So first, why do we care about black box MPC? So I'll start with a smear campaign. Non-black box protocols are almost always very inefficient or impractical. Okay, so non-black box protocols are typically impractical, and certainly the general ones. And if we want to get general protocols that are practical, then we'd better stick to black box protocols. This does not mean that black box protocols are practical, and the protocol you'll see later in this talk is by no means practical. However, the line of work on trying to get black box alternatives to previous non-black box techniques has led to new techniques and to practical protocols. Okay, this includes protocols in the context of garbled circuits, in the context of MPC in the head, and so on. Okay, so we have quite a few examples that tell us that this endeavor is useful also for practice. The second point is about the plane model. Why do we care about the plane model? Why not allow a common random string or even a random oracle? This is certainly legit in a practical context. But here, of course, there's the theoretical side that insisting on working on the plane model, and this has been the case for all the talks of this session and the previous session, it really gives rise to an interesting landscape of theoretical questions. These questions force us, and the competition on solving these questions forces us to develop new techniques, and these techniques often find other applications. Okay, so this is my short justification for why we keep working on these questions. Okay, so now I go to describe the techniques. So a major building block or a kind of a tool we use to get a 4-round protocol is a so-called IPS compiler. And just to motivate it at a high level, when we face a difficult problem that we don't know how to solve, it's often useful to break it into simpler problems. And this is the goal of the IPS compiler. It takes the difficult problem of building round efficient, malicious secure protocols with dishonest majorities, and reduces it to 2 simpler problems. One is a similar question, right? Malicious secure protocol, but with a strong honest majority. This will be referred to as an outer protocol. And the second question is building a protocol with security against dishonest majority, but semi-honest parties only. And this is something we refer to as the inner protocol. Okay, and these two building blocks can be put together to get the final protocol. Okay, so let me say a bit more about these two building blocks. So we have here 4 parties that we want to compute some function. The outer protocol uses additional parties called servers. We have M of them, where the clients can talk to servers and servers can talk to clients. And we assume an honest majority of servers. Okay? And for our purposes, we will really need this outer protocol to only have 2 rounds. So there's a first round where each client sends a message, each party sends a message to each server. We can think of these messages as some secret sharing or encoding of the inputs. And then each server does some local computation and responds with a message back to each party. Okay, and we think of these messages as an encoding of the output that can be locally decoded to learn the output. Okay, so these are very simple protocols. We need them to achieve malicious security against an adversary who can corrupt any number of parties, but only a small fraction of the servers. And it turns out that insisting on small enough, or if we allow a small enough fraction of corrupted servers, say less than n/4, then we can do it in 2 rounds. This was shown in joint work with Kushilevitz and Paskin. And it's still open, by the way, to do it in this model with just a strict honest majority. Okay, but for the purpose of the IPS compiler, any constant fraction of resilience is good enough. Cool, so what do we do about these servers, right? We don't have these servers out there. We don't have an honest majority. Well, we virtualize them. And the way we virtualize them is using this inner protocol, which only has to be secure against any number of semi-honest parties. And this inner protocol is used to emulate the function computed by each server, right? So for each server, we run a copy of the inner protocol to compute a function whose inputs are the incoming messages and whose outputs are the outgoing messages. Okay, so this is what we use the inner protocol to just get rid of the servers. Okay, up to now, everything compiles. And the nice thing is that we can even run all these inner protocols in parallel. So, you know, so up to now, the resulting protocol that I described has the same round complexity as the inner protocol, which is great because we reduced round complexity of malicious security to the semi-honest security. Unfortunately, things are not so simple. And the reason is that, you know, nothing prevents the adversary, right, the malicious party, from cheating in all of the instances of the malicious protocol, thereby making all servers in the outer protocol corrupted. Okay? So we need, so the outer protocol doesn't give any guarantee when all servers are corrupted. So we need an additional mechanism, and this additional mechanism is called the watchlist protocol, which is kind of some version of cut and choose. Technically, a watchlist protocol is a multi-party version of random oblivious transfer that effectively gives each party the ability to completely watch a randomly chosen small and secret subset of the inner protocol instances. And by completely watch, I mean that this protocol actually delivers the input and randomness each other party uses in the inner protocol in the watched executions. Okay, and given this information, you know, we can just check consistency of the messages that the parties actually send with the input and randomness they are effectively committed to via the watch list. Okay, so the number of watch parties on the one hand should be small enough so that it doesn't violate the security of the outer protocol. But on the other hand, it should be large enough to ensure that if some party tries to cheat in too many instances of the inner protocol, this party will be caught with overwhelming probability. Okay, so effectively, if I don't want to get caught, I'd better cheat in few instances of the inner protocol, in which case we're effectively in a situation where a small number of servers in the outer protocol are corrupted. Good, so now let's go to the easiest question here. How do we want to instantiate the inner protocol? Recall that an inner protocol is a semi-honest secure protocol. For the inner protocol, we basically understand now, after a lot of research, what is the minimal round complexity of black box MPC using semi-honest 2-round OT? And the answer is 3. And this was shown in a recent work by Patra and Srinivasan. Okay, so this is, we lose nothing by using this inner protocol, and this is the inner protocol we use. But in fact, we need it to satisfy some stronger property, which it in fact satisfies. And this stronger property is that nothing can go wrong in the first 2 rounds. Okay, so even, if arbitrary messages are sent in the first 2 rounds, no harm is done until the final round messages are being sent. Okay, this is the extra property that we use. And given this extra property, if we can complete the execution of the watchlist protocol before the final round of the inner protocol, then we're okay. Okay, because if I detect cheating, I can just not send the final round messages and no harm is done. Okay, so yeah, we need the watchlist execution to complete before the final round. And if you do the counting, then we see that we need the inner protocol to execute in rounds 2, 3, and 4, and the watchlist protocol to execute in rounds 1, 2, and 3. Okay, that's the only way to go. Okay, but we need a 3-round watchlist protocol. It needs to be black box, and in fact, this is impossible with black box simulation. So what do we do? Okay, so what can we achieve in 3 rounds if we can't achieve the normal notion of simulation security? Well, let's consider just a 2-party version of the watchlist functionality, which is just K out of MOT, but the same discussion can apply to any 2-party functionality. The watchlist is just pairwise copies of this functionality between each pair of parties. Okay, so we have here a sender and a receiver, and the normal flow of messages is sender, receiver, sender. Sender, receiver, sender, such that the receiver gets the last message. And because the sender sends 2 messages, we can rewind the second message of the protocol and hope to extract an effective input from the sender efficiently, but we can't have the same hope for the receiver. And indeed, the best we can hope for security with abort. Okay, the best we can hope for is not security with abort, but security with super polynomial simulation. Okay, so we can kind of brute force extract the input of the receiver who only sends 1 message. Okay, so this is what we can hope for, and it turns out that this is what we can actually achieve. Okay, so we can get a black box 3-round protocol for a 2-party watch list with standard security against malicious sender and super polynomial simulation against malicious receiver. And in fact, we can extend it using some blood, sweat, and tears. This can be extended to the case of multiple copies running in parallel, which involves a lot of messy non-malleability issues, but this can be done. Okay, so here's, we're getting close to the end. How much time do I have? Okay. Wait, so how much time do I have until
6 minutes with questions.
Okay, 6 minutes with questions, great. So I'll wrap up quickly. Okay, so we need to instantiate the IPS protocol with a 3-round watch list. So again, the natural way is just the way that I said before. Rounds 2, 3, 4 are the inner protocol. 1, 2, 3 is the watch list protocol. But because we only have this weaker notion of SPS security, the final protocol will only have SPS security, and we want more. We want standard polynomial security. Okay, so this is not enough, right? And the extra trick we use, is this previous notion of promise style extraction. which gives us a stronger notion of security than this just a super polynomial simulation against malicious receiver. So the protocol syntactically takes the previous 3-message protocol, but augments it with a parallel protocol where the flow of messages is reversed. And now, we have 2 messages from the receiver, which gives us hope to extract. We can still not get the standard notion of security, but something we can get, roughly speaking, is that whenever the receiver is not caught cheating by the sender, we can extract an effective receiver input in polynomial time. Okay, and the technical requirement is that there is a polynomial time extractor that, given a constant number of accepting transcripts, can extract a receiver input. And the reason this is non-trivial, one reason why this is non-trivial to construct in a black box way, is that we need to ensure that in these 2 parallel instances, the receiver uses the same effective input. Okay, so this is part of the non-triviality, but in fact, we show that this is possible in a black box way. We get a black box promise style extraction OT protocol, and this again, blood, sweat, and tears extends to the watchlist case of having many copies running in parallel. Okay, so we're almost done. So in the final protocol, we have these 2, the baseline watchlist protocol interleaved with the inner protocol, and we have this mirror copy that is used for promise style extraction. There are still several issues. What if the adversary, like a malicious receiver, cheats? Okay, so now the sender knows, hey, he cheats, we cannot extract. But now the OT sender, the watchlist sender, can just say, hey, this is a cheater. I do not send the final message of the inner protocol, and then no harm is done. And if, if the malicious receiver does not cheat, if the honest sender accepts, then we just rewind the malicious receiver and we extract. Okay, so this is, of course, oversimplified, and I don't expect this to make full sense, but these ideas can be used to get a normal polynomial time simulation for the final protocol. Okay, so so this is the part that was supposed to be removed. So let me get to the conclusion. So we get a 4-round, we get the first version of a round optimal black box protocol in a plane model. There is a nice technical aspect here that we get polynomial time simulation. The super polynomial time simulator is only used in the hybrids. Again, it's kind of reminiscent of the FLS technique that we heard about in the previous talk, but here it's all fully black box. And this technique can be useful elsewhere. There are several open questions. The most obvious one is to replace sub-exponential hardness by polynomial hardness. The most interesting one is to just use semi-honest OT or even 4-round malicious OT instead of this SSP OT. And my favorite one is to simplify this mess. Okay? So thank you.
Thanks a lot. We have time for a quick question.
Thank you. Could you describe a little bit about the non-malleability issues?
Yeah, so here the techniques are actually borrowed from our previous paper from 2 years ago, and they use also non-malleable codes to handle these issues in a black box way.
You also need to make the OT non-malleable?
So the OT, again, this is taken care of by the non-malleable codes. We don't need any extra properties.
Okay, great. Let's thank Yuval again. Thank you. So we did great in time. There's no time for break. So we will do 1 minute break.